Welcome. This is episode 6 of Driepoot. Driepoot is an Afrikaans word, a little traditional pot with 3 legs. Those 3 legs, they are situated here in Athens, Georgia, in the United States. Also, the second leg is in Perth, in Australia, and Jan is the Australian. Welcome to the program, Jan.
Thanks, Donnie.
The third leg sits in South Africa, Valentijn van der Merwe in Pretoria, South Africa. Welcome, Valentijn.
Hello, Donnie.
And then today we have a guest, Marnus Kamfer. Welcome, Marnus.
Thank you very much, Donnie.
So, Driepoot is a program where we discuss as 3 Afrikaners with some guests, sometimes the hunting situation on the 3 continents that we live. And today we have a guest here. Marnus Kamfer is the legal and risk manager at AfriForum. Now, AfriForum is the biggest civil rights organization in the Southern Hemisphere. They have 282,000 paying members. Those members give their money to AfriForum in South Africa to say, please look after our civil rights and the things that concern us. They give that money mainly for the greater cause instead of individual things that they want for themselves. And AfriForum has the task to look after the civil rights of people in South Africa, specifically focused on the Afrikaner minority group in South Africa. Now, we are discussing in this episode a new concept law regarding firearms in South Africa, and Marnus is the project manager. He is a lawyer by profession, but now full-time employed by AfriForum in South Africa. And Marnus is here on the program because there's lots of people that are so angry in South Africa because this is an assault on the freedoms that people still have to own and use firearms, mainly for hunting, like we all are hunters. And Marnus, so first up, and I think people will realize English is not our first language, none of us, and so sometimes we just run out of words. But anyway, welcome to the program. You are also forgiven for not being able to speak English too well. We're going to give it our best shot. Tell us a little bit about this new concept law and how ridiculous it is.
Donnie, thank you once again for the opportunity. And a ridiculous law indeed. The South Africans, the general population in South Africa is very perturbed by this piece of concept legislation. Luckily, it's not legislation yet. And if we can help it, it won't be for some time.
Yes.
We will fight this thing until the end with all resources at our disposal. But let's quickly have a look at what they envisage and what the government would like to amend the existing legislation with. The first thing we see that really has a lot of people hot under the collar is the fact that they want to make it much more difficult to acquire a license for hunting or sport shooting purposes. The way they're going to look at the applications, the motivation, the factors that need to be touched on is a real administrative mess. And if your viewers watch the news quite recently with regard to South Africa's firearm registry, they'll see that files looks like mountains in the halls of the relevant building, which is a very unsafe building, by the way. So that have the people hot under the collar, the hoops they need to jump through just to get a firearm license to go and even with the more let's just say there's the section 15 license, which is your occasional hunter like me that goes out on quite a regular basis, but not as much as a dedicated hunter. And a dedicated hunter is another class of license altogether, and it's all the more difficult for that poor guy to keep his license or to get a section 16 license. There's institutions that you need to belong to have this license or to even can apply for this license. And they're putting a lot of pressure on these institutions now to stick their neck out and to actually police their own members and to ask them, listen, have you, how many times have you hunted this year? Or how many sports shooting competitions were you present at this year? And what were your scores? Because they need to take this report and report to the authorities with regards to that member. And that's the only way that member can keep his license or obtain a new one. And that's quite frustrating for the firearm owner in South Africa. The further thing that's of great concern is that they want to limit the amount of ammunition you can have per firearm to 100 rounds. And obviously you can apply to have more, but the hoops you once again need to jump through to only get that is astonishing. And on top of that, in the consent law, they want to make it illegal to load your own ammunition. And in South Africa, that's a big thing because the factory ammunition is quite expensive.
Yeah.
And people like to be accurate with the hunting. They don't want the animal to suffer. They want to kill as clean as possible. And even when they shoot at a greater distance, they want to make sure that the antelope or the game they hunt is eliminated immediately and there's no unnecessary suffering. And they do their own load development to improve this accuracy and to know exactly what the ammunition is going to do. Now, they want to stop that with this concept law. And the people are concerned. They say, well, this is expensive, this really load equipment that I do have. I have been saving and buying it for several years. What now? Am I a criminal just because a concept law from a government decides that? And that seems to be the case. And there's going to be especially on that one, there's going to be a lot of fight. Now in South Africa, and that's the next point, people start hunting from a very young age with their fathers or their uncles, whatever the case may be. And it's very sensitive for the Afrikaner people because they want to change it now. The legislation as it stands reads that you as a licensed firearm owner can take someone with you. And in your immediate presence, that person may fire with your fire or shoot with your firearm. And that's what many a father and many an uncle did with their young nephew, their young son at 11, 12 years, shooting their first antelope. But that's going to stop now if the government has its say. Because the new act reads that you must be 16 years or older to even shoot this firearm in the presence of a licensed firearm owner who must have his license for at least 3 years. That also leaves a very, very bitter taste in the mouths of many a father. They further want to go ahead and give the registrar or the minister the powers to ban certain ammunition. So if the minister decides that he doesn't like a certain kind of ammunition, he will have the opportunity and he will have the power to simply say, listen, I'm banning this. No more manufacturing of this ammunition. And on that point, the concept legislation wants to give the minister additional powers with regards to the import and export of firearms and ammunition. And once again, the problem is now, while I'm sitting here talking to you, I have a Sauer rifle 101. And that Sauer is not manufactured in South Africa. It's manufactured in Europe. And the minister, if this goes through, will have the power to block certain ammunition, to block certain firearms, or to block all of it. It will be in his discretion. It's not, with all respect, it's not very capitalistic or very democratic for that matter. Yeah. The further problem is, and like we said to each other earlier, the administrative nightmare in South Africa with regards to the application and renewal for licenses and competency certificates as it is already. They want to even further that load or make that load even heavier by changing the timeline that a license will remain valid. Currently, for a hunting rifle, a Section 15 or Section 16, like we spoke about earlier, an occasional hunter's license or dedicated hunter's license will be valid for a period of 10 years. And also the competency certificate that goes with that. They want to change that now, everything down to 5 years. So while they're suffering already during the 10-year renewal period, and people have to wait approximately 1.5 to 2 years just to receive their renewed license, now they want to make it shorter to 5 years. we foresee an absolute nightmare. And then just to close off quickly, the minister further give himself in this legislation more regulation powers that's absolutely necessary. His regulation powers will go as far, according to this legislation, that he will be able to change the firearm law as we know it as he wishes at any given time in the form of regulations that is empowered by this main piece of legislation that they want to amend now. And then the final big problem is the semi-automatic weapons, the AR-15s, the pump action 12-gauge shotguns. They want to take that away. They call it a prohibited weapon. Prohibited is maybe the wrong word. Let's call it a reserved weapon, might be the more accurate word. And they want to only give it out to people who can really prove that it's necessary for them to have it. And let's not lie to each other. It's going to be nearby impossible to get your hands on one of these rifles. And once again, what happens to the persons that already have the semi-automatic weapons in their possession? Do they need to give it into the state now? That's expensive stuff. People saved a long time to buy this, to accessorize it with scopes and silences and whatnot. So now there's a lot of rands in that weapon, and they simply expect from the citizen of South Africa to give it in because they decided the act's going to change and that person does not qualify for a license anymore. It's quite ludicrous. And then I think one of the most important factors that really have people quite mad in South Africa is the fact that they want to take away self-defense as a reason to possess a firearm. So in South Africa, currently Section 13 and 14 of the Act states that you can apply for a firearm license for the reason of self-defense. And in South Africa, there's 4.5 million firearms that register, and by far the most of them is for self-defense because the police failed us. In 2018, our National Commissioner of Police stated that sorry, we are too thinly stretched. We do not have the resources. We do not have the manpower. Citizens of South Africa, we cannot protect you. What happened after this? People start taking their safety of themselves and their family into their own hands. They started organizing themselves into neighborhood watches, for instance, which AfriForum gladly assists with. And they start training with the firearm. They went through the administrative nightmare of obtaining one. They trained with it. They trained with their women and children. They acted out scenarios of what might happen at home and what to do then. And what did the government do? Instead of coming and saying, listen, we see that you guys are suffering. How can we help your suffering? They come and say, listen, here's a concept legislation. Let's make it more difficult for you.
Yeah.
The telephone calls we receive is of very, very, very emotional people stating, listen, I'm trying to look after myself and my family. And now the government wants to take that only piece of equipment I have to protect myself and my wife, want to take that away. Why? And we simply cannot stand for that. We're going to fight this till the end. This is only some of the amendments they proposed. If we need to talk about all of them, this show is going to be a lot longer.
Yes. Yeah, so it's 140 pages of concept legislation, of which you have touched on the high points. Very dangerous in a country that has 20,000 murders a year. To do this to your citizens, and I think specifically Americans can be very thankful for what we have in this country. Jan, could you speak to the Australian situation, please?
Dani, yeah, I really want to recommend that the guys in South Africa fight this to the last drop. Around here, we've already seen a lot of those things that Marnus mentioned. We have quite a few issues around here with justifying why we need firearms. You can never say that you want a firearm for self-protection around here, but this is a safe country, supposedly, even though the crime is on the up here as well. It's just slower than in South Africa. And I really think that's a point that should be made clear to the world, that people, the police themselves said they can't protect the people. But now that same people, the same police officers are trying to take people's ability away to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And I mean, the NRA in America is very, very successful, but they've got the Second Amendment behind them that make it clear that it's your right to own a firearm and to protect yourself. While everywhere else in the world, you know, you're sort of under the protection of the government. But if the government decide not to protect you, who's going to protect you? And what they're typically doing now is they turn good law-abiding citizens into people who have to consider, am I going to die a good citizen, or am I going to turn slightly criminal and protect myself?
Yes.
And that makes it really, really difficult. It's a very hard choice. Around here, we've got the same thing, you know. There's a number of things that happen around here where the police, every time that they come out with something, the gun owners, the firearm owners, the voters lose. And, you know, they come with really ridiculous suggestions so that they can sacrifice something, so that in the end you feel you want something by stopping them from accomplishing what they said they want to do. But everybody then forgets what they had to sacrifice in order to get rid of that ridiculous suggestions, which should never have happened in the first instance. Never give an inch when you're dealing with these people. They come with ridiculous suggestions. Don't think that you can fight it with something that's not ridiculous. You know, it's really a tough situation.
Yeah.
If I can just come in there, Donnie, you mentioned that we have 20,000 murders a year. Just to put that into perspective regarding the self-defense issue, is I think I stand corrected, but I think it's only Venezuela that has a higher murder rate than South Africa regarding countries where there's not active war at this stage. So we have a really high murder rate in South Africa, and violent crimes as well. So, and we have our public Minister of Police stating in public that one of the main reasons for taking away self-defense as an option or as a motivation is that we have criminals breaking into homes, stealing all of the legal weapons to go and use that legal weapons for crime again. So the reason being is take away all of the legal weapons and they think it will stop all of the violent crime. And there's, as we all know, there's a lot of statistics that shows quite the opposite will happen.
Marnus, you guys have scientific proof of that, is that right? That it's contrary to popular belief that to take guns from legal citizens does not help. You have proof of that, scientific proof.
Yeah, Donnie, if I can come in here quickly, and Valentine touched on a very interesting point, and that is the point of Venezuela. Let's look at Venezuela. In 2013, they tried the same thing. They enacted legislation stating that they were going to disarm now, because they also lived in this dream that if you removed firearms, crime will disappear altogether. And what happened a year after that when they again investigated this matter? The legal firearm owners, indeed law-abiding citizens, tried to give in their weapons. The criminals still all had their weapons. And in the end, less than 1% of the illegal weapons were off the street because of that legislation. So what happened now? Legal citizens were disarmed and the criminals still had weapons. And a country like South Africa, where the police cannot protect you and you take the legal weapons from law-abiding citizens, and remember, South Africa is a very interesting continent. It's not a small continent in the sea. The borders in South Africa are shot. People go through these borders in and out as they wish. During the lockdown period, when the government banned the smoking of cigarettes and the purchasing of cigarettes in shops, there was videos where the people came through the borders to South Africa, well, the non-existing borders, if I may go as far, with bags of cigarettes on their backs, running through the border, no one stopping them.
Yeah.
Now, if it's that easy for them to go into the country with that bags on their back, how easy is it for them to bring in illegal firearms? And you can have a look at the farm murders. You can have a look at the what's the transiter robberies where they rob the vehicles of the money. It's military grade weapons they use, not the weapons law-abiding citizens have. It's AK-47s, full automatic. It's R5s, it's R4s. It's military weapons. So once again, why do you need to punish the legal firearm owner that just want to protect himself and his family, and to go and hunt from time to time for some meat and some boating and some drivers, and I hope the criminal feel on it. It simply doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Marnus, I just want to. I'm wondering, if the logic is that if we remove legal firearms, then there'll be less illegal firearms because they can't get stolen. As Minister Chele suggested, what he's going to do with all the police and army firearms and get rid of them as well, because that's where the large numbers of firearms are stolen in South Africa.
You're quite right. We've seen in the past few years, 5,000 firearms got lost from the police services. Not even robbed always, it's just lost. 9.5 million rounds of ammunition just lost from the police services side. And remember, we haven't touched on the military, the South African National Defence Force. The amount of weapons and ammunition that get lost there is chaotic. If I can have you walk into some police stations in South Africa, through the front door, up to the stairs, to the safes and the strong rooms where weapons are held, it's open. You can help yourself because they simply don't care. But once again, who suffers? The persons that go through the administrative nightmare, that puts in safes in their house that's military grade, that looks after that weapon with everything you've got. That person gets attacked by our minister. It just simply doesn't make sense. He's not cleaning. His house is not in order, and he wants to attack others. It's
Marnus, so we have gotten to know AfriForum as a scientific organization that goes about this in a scientific way. What is the game plan forward, and what should people do?
Thank you, Donnie. Yeah, it's like I said earlier, we really received calls and we acted quite quickly when we saw this concept legislation, because we don't want that to happen. We don't want the citizens in South Africa to suffer. We want to protect their interests at all costs. But the first thing we immediately did was just to release a media statement to tell everybody we are going to fight this. Just to give them that ray of hope, to know that the organization will be out there fighting against this concept legislation. And we didn't expect it, but that Monday, the government gazette in which this concept was published was on a Friday night. So it came to most of the citizens on a Saturday morning. And then on the Saturday, I started working on this media statement just to create that hope. On that Monday, organizations from all over this country, people from all over this country were up in arms, excuse the pun. They phoned us and told us, listen, what can we do to assist? Professors, doctors, people who did master's degrees wanted to help us with research and research documents that they already had in their possession. So what can we do to help you guys fight this? Other organizations that would never have spoken to each other are speaking, sharing information, sharing plans, making plans to fight this until the end. So it was really a marvelous thing to see. So we immediately instructed then the best advocates we could to start drafting commentary against this concept, because that's why the concept was released in the government gazette. It was for the citizens of the country now to give their commentary on this, and that commentary must be taken into account. So we did this, and with that we established a website like many other organizations to ask the people, please get onto the website, register yourself, answer the questions that's asked of you, so we can have your voice with our commentary. So that in the end, if all else fails and we end up in the Constitutional Court, which is the highest court in this country, we can tell the judges listen, here's our commentary. Here's the reasons for it. But it's not only us and our 283,000 members. Here's 500, 600, 700,000 other voices that's being added by this. And then when that amount of people start petitioning against a piece of legislation, a judge and all 7 of them that sits in the Constitutional Court must really consider that. Because if they simply ignore the voices of the citizens, you're in for anarchy.
Yeah. So give the website. Give the website and how many people have signed the petition already?
Well, at this stage, like I said, the website is not very long. Well, it's not in existence very long, and approximately close to 15,000 people have signed it already.
Ooh, that's fantastic.
The more we have this awareness that we're creating, and sorry, I almost spoke while you were speaking, but what I also want to state, there's a really large campaign being launched on a lot of projects that's going to keep creating awareness among the people of exactly what these amendments entail and what will happen if this concept goes through. And we are convinced that the petition will be signed by various people. We need to answer, I think the date for the commentary closes on the 6th of July. And during this time, we're really going to fight this.
Okay.
Marnus, is this as this concept been drafted by a committee? How many individuals was involved in coming up with this legislation that you guys have to combat now? And do you know who they are?
That's very interesting. The first time we saw this legislation was when it leaked from the government side in 2018.
Right.
Oh, there was chaos. Because this document started making its appearance and it got sent around by social media and it had the people mad. And then they said, whoa, don't worry. We don't know where that had its appearance from. Just ignore it. It's not the case. What happens? Exactly that document with some amendments. So they've been working on this for several years. And unfortunately, the Minister of Police, Bekitsele, is the one that drives it because he's got this narcissistic, egoistic way of doing things his way or the highway. And if they don't want to play with him, he sits in the corner with his big hat and cries. So he's the one that really drives this. And obviously, they appoint advocates and attorneys to help with it, and the legislator as well. And then it goes back and forth until the cabinet approves it, and then it's given over for commentating by the citizens. And then after that commentary has been taken into account, they'll make a decision.
My concern is just that, there might be some of those people on that committee that might be your neighbor and you don't even know it's him. And I don't think, not to take any shots at Bekitsele, but I don't think he's smart enough to come up with all of these things by himself. And he gets suggestions from other people. We need to identify those people and figure out who they are so that if you talk to him, you know what his background is and what his thoughts are.
Yeah. So luckily for us, we have a Dr. Peter Groenewald from the Freedom Front. He's in one of the portfolio committees that deals with this. And he's one of the good guys. He actually wants to fight this with everything in him as well. And he's the one that asked the questions in the parliament. And he's the one that asks very uncomfortable questions that they rarely can answer. So we're in conversation with the Freedom Front as well because of that fact. And it was yesterday when we had our last meeting and conversation, and he said, no way, there's going to be a lot of questions asked. When they drafted this concept legislation, they didn't even follow the routes they should have. They ignored some of that routes. They ignored some of the meetings that had to transpire before it could have been published. But that's the ANC for you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. It's good to know that Peter Groenewald's in the committee, because at least that exposes, the background of some of those people. Marnus, we also know you have a heavyweight legal team on your side. I think Americans will know Oscar Pistorius, and they might have seen the attorney that put Oscar in jail, Harry Nell, and he's in your legal team. You yourself a qualified lawyer and a whole team of people, and we wish you all the best. This is unacceptable from all directions. It is as bad as it looks from all angles, and we will support you as much as we can from the side of Driepoot. The website is myfirearm.co.za. That's where you should put your name to add to the resistance to this ridiculous legislation. We thank you for your time. Valentine, you and Jan, thank you again for your participation. Let's do all we can to stop this nonsense, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Donnie.
Thanks. Have a good night.